Hello, and welcome to another in the series called Let's Ask. This is a place where if you have a question that's on your mind and you'd like to receive an answer directly from the Bible, ask us. Please go to www.exposingtruthministry.com and place your questions there. The question we feature may just be yours, so please keep in tune for that. We're so happy to have Brother Jason Smith with us. You can read more articles and other articles and presentation from Brother Jason at asitreads.com, ASIT reads.com. You can also see several video presentation by Brother Jason Smith on our YouTube channel, Exposing Truth Ministry YouTube. You're in the hot seat again, Brother Jason. The question for Brother Jason is, let's ask Jason, how can we know for sure which day is the Sabbath day?
All right. Which day is the Sabbath day? Well, this question is very much related to the previous question that I answered about lunar Sabbaths. If you look at that answer, you will see that in the Bible, weeks operate in unbroken succession. So whichever day is the seventh day Sabbath, it is always going to be that same day. So if we understand the first part, then now we can answer this second part. And the good news is that God sent his son to this earth approximately 2,000 years ago now, and he was here and he kept the Sabbath. And there's no way that he got the day wrong. In Luke chapter 4, verse 16, the Bible tells us that it was Jesus's custom to go to the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Also, in Mark chapter 2, verse 28, Jesus claimed that he was Lord also of the Sabbath day. So there's absolutely no way that Jesus got the day wrong. He disagreed with some of the traditions that the first century Jews had bound the Sabbath day with, and he would loose the Sabbath from those traditions, but he always affirmed the Sabbath day. In fact, he taught in Matthew 12, I believe, that it was lawful to do well on the Sabbath. So we have a historical marker point with the Son of God on earth when we can know what the day was. So we really want to find out from history what day was a Sabbath when Jesus was on the earth. Now, in the Bible, in Mark chapter 15, verse 42, we read this. And let me just turn there. Now, when the evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath. And then in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, verse 56, and chapter 24, verse 1, we read this. Then, and this is talking about the women who followed Jesus, and this is right after he had died. Then they returned and prepared spices and fragrant oils, and they rested on the Sabbath according to the commandment. Now, chapter 24, verse 1. Now, on the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they and certain other women with them came to the tomb, bringing the spices which they had prepared. So, what we have here, according to the gospel records, is a sequence of 3 days: the preparation day, the Sabbath day according to the commandment, and then the first day of the week. Now, this has been understood as being Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. That is the sequence of 3 days. Now, many people protest that, and they, as we talked about previously, the lunar Sabbatarians being one group. However, the Bible tells us, and this is Acts chapter 21, that Moses of old time was preached in every city, in being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. Now, so that means throughout the Roman Empire, where there were synagogues, there were Jewish people that were meeting on the Sabbath day throughout the empire. And there's a historian named Josephus. And in a book called War of the Jews, book 4, section 582, he says this. And he's talking about the practice of keeping the Sabbath and how they would blow the trumpets. They gave a signal beforehand with a trumpet. At the beginning of every seventh day, in the evening twilight, as also at the evening when that day was finished, as giving notice to the people when they were to stop work and when they were to go to work again. Again, Josephus now in a document he wrote called Against Apion, chapter 2, verse 40, he says, the multitude of mankind itself have had a great inclination for a long time to follow our religious observances. For there is not any city of the Grecians, nor any of the barbarians, nor any nation whatsoever, whither our custom of resting on the seventh day hath not come. He continues a little while later on, as God himself pervades all the world, so hath our law passed throughout all the world also. So in these two quotes, Josephus makes it clear that a trumpet signaled when it was time for the Jews to stop working every seventh day in the evening twilight, and they had a custom of resting on the seventh day. That's very sounds familiar to what we read in Luke chapter 4, verse 16 about Jesus. So we see that there was a definitiveness, the seventh day, and a repetition, a continual succession every seventh day. Another historical source named Philo, and lunar Sabbatarians like to quote him, but they don't quote him completely. This is a document that he wrote called the Decalogue. And he says the fourth commandment has reference to the sacred seventh day, that it may be passed in a sacred and holy manner. Some states keep the holy festival only once in the month, counting from the new moon as a day sacred to God. But the nation of the Jews keep every seventh day regularly after each interval of 6 days. So lunar Sabbatarians like to quote that first part and they'll leave off the last part. But Philo is actually saying that the Jews keep every seventh day regularly after each interval of 6 days. So there could be no break like a lunar Sabbath theory has. Check my previous answer if you wonder what I'm talking about here. My point is that historical records support what the Bible says about the seventh day Sabbath being kept by Jews in various places throughout the Roman Empire. In their synagogues, there would be the preaching of Moses every seventh day Sabbath. Now, since this is the record of the Bible and it's also the record of history, common sense says, well, now let's look at what some Roman historians say. Let's see what they say the Jews were doing on the seventh day. And so I'm quoting now from a Roman soldier named Frontinus, and he was writing in the year 84 AD. And he's writing in Strategum 2 1.17. He says, the defied Augustus Vespasian attacked the Jews on the day of Saturn, a day which it is sinful for them to do any business. The day of Saturn is where we get our word for Saturday. Here now, writing in approximately 100 AD, is Cornelius Tacitus. He's a Roman historian and a senator, and he was writing about the Jewish custom of keeping the Sabbath, and he speculated why they did it. He says this, they are said to have devoted the seventh day to rest because that day brought an end to their troubles. Later, finding idleness alluring, they gave up the seventh year as well to sloth. Others maintain that they do this in honor of Saturn, either because their religious principles are derived from the idea, who are supposed to have been driven out with Saturn and became the ancestors of the Jewish people, or because of the seven constellations which govern the lives of men, the star of Saturn moves in the topmost orbit and exercises peculiar influence, and also because most of the heavenly bodies move round their courses in multiples of seven. And this is from the Histories, Book 5. Now, of course, his speculation is completely wrong, but we see that he's associating Saturn with the day that the Jews would not work. Here's another Roman historian, Cassius Dio. He is a 2nd century AD author, but he's writing about things that happened in the 1st century BC. This is about a battle between Rome and the Jews in 63 BC. Most of the city, to be sure, he took without any trouble, as he was received by the party of Hyrcanus, but the temple itself, which the other party had occupied, he captured only with difficulty. for it was on high ground and was fortified by a wall of its own. And if they had continued defending it on all days alike, he could not have gotten possession of it. As it was, they made an excavation of what are called the days of Saturn, and by doing no work at all on those days, afforded the Romans an opportunity in this interval to batter down the wall. The latter, on learning of this superstitious awe of theirs, made no serious attempts the rest of the time, but on those days, when they came round in succession, assaulted most vigorously. Thus the defenders were captured on the day of Saturn, without making any defense, and all the wealth was plundered. The kingdom was given to Hyrcanus, and Aristobulus was carried away. And this is Cassius Dio, Roman History 37.16, 1 through 4. Now, history tells us that the Jews were actually in the middle of a civil war at this time. And what Cassius is talking about, he's talking about a Roman general named Pompey, and he came to Jerusalem to settle this civil war. And one faction sided with him, but the other faction did not, and they barricaded themselves in the temple, which had the high ground. And Josephus actually tells us about this in his War of the Jews, Book 1, section 148. And you'll see that Josephus says that the Jews who were in the temple, they did not leave off the instances of their divine worship that were appointed by their law. And so the Romans actually saw that, hey, every Saturn's day, they stopped fighting us. And so the Romans actually said, well, we're actually going to wait then till Saturn's day, and that's when we're going to try to break down the wall. And Josephus actually tells us how long it took in that same section. He says that it took 3 months. I'm quoting now. It was in the 3rd month of the siege before the Romans could even with great difficulty overthrow one of the towers and get into the temple. And again, that's Josephus' War of the Jews, Book 1, section 148. So when we combine what Cassius Dio says, that it was in the interval of the days of Saturn, right, coming round in succession, and we see what Josephus says, that it was 3 months before they could even break down one of the towers, we understand that it was at least 12 Sabbaths that all occurred on the day of Saturn, and the Romans observed and they picked up to be like, hey, this is the best day for us to attack them because they won't fight back on this particular day. Again, Cassius Dio, and he's now writing about a war in 36 BC, and this was the war that actually brought Herod into power. He says, and this is 49:22, 4 through 6, the Jews indeed had done much injury to the Romans, but they suffered far more themselves. The first of them to be captured were those who were fighting for the precinct of their God, and then the rest on the day, even then, called the day of Saturn. And so excessive were they in their devotion to religion that the first set of prisoners, those who had been captured along with the temple, obtained leave from Socinus when the day of Saturn came round again and went into the temple and there performed all their customary rites together with the rest of the people. So we're seeing a consistent stream of witnesses from these Roman historians saying that, yeah, the 7th day that the Jewish people keep is what we call the day of Saturn. And it is in a completely consistent rotation. It comes around again and again and again. It is the same day, the day of Saturn. And that is the day today that we call Saturday. Now, here's even another witness. This is an early Christian named Justin Martyr, and he lived around 100 to 165 AD. He's speaking about Jesus's crucifixion. And I got this from the online edition of his work. And it says, he was crucified on the day before that of Saturn, aka Saturday. And on the day after that of Saturn, which is the day of the sun, having appeared to his apostles and disciples, he taught them these things which we have submitted to you also for your consideration. In other words, Justin Martyr is saying Jesus died on a Friday, the day before Saturday, and he rose on a Sunday, the day after Saturday. Now, Justin Martyr he tried to make an argument for Sunday, a common assembly. And this was a part of the mystery of lawlessness that Paul warned about that was working already. But the point is, historically speaking, he's correct as to which day it was that was the Sabbath day. Now, in a previous answer, I shared some quotes from the Talmud that are also evidence that support that the seventh day Sabbath would actually be Saturday. And so, historically speaking, we can see the weight of evidence is that the seventh day Sabbath is Saturday. And if you were to ask any practicing Jewish person upon the earth today, they would tell you the same thing. And there's even a trend that has happened in languages that have been influenced by Christianity that their word for the seventh day is actually related to the word Sabbath, like Sabbato. And it's the same day that we call Saturday. So the plethora of witnesses indicates that the time that Jesus was on the earth, and there is no way that Jesus got the day wrong, the seventh day Sabbath of the Bible is the same as the day that we call Saturday. I hope this helps that you can know which day is God's seventh day Sabbath.
Thank you so much for clearing that up for us, Brother Jason. Do you have a question, viewer, that you would like answered? Please let us know at www.exposingtruthministry.com. If you'd like a one-on-one Bible study, that's available as well. Or if you'd like to join a group study, the information for the group studies are available on our website. Feel free to check out our other presentation on the YouTube channel. There are some presentations from Brother Jason, and you can also go to asitreads.com to see some more material that the Lord has used Brother Jason to produce. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.